Hi, my name's Christy Zablation. I'm here to help you with dissecting a rubric. So a little bit of information about myself. I'm in my 5th semester currently of my doctoral program for curriculum instruction, and I was alumni in my master's program for executive leadership. And so some background about me, in high school, I was an average student and was a first generation student, college student. And I never thought I would actually be here where I am today. And the reason why I thought this is because initially, when I started community college, I was placed into 080 remedial reading and 090 writing level courses. So I definitely struggled as a writer, and I even almost flunked out in my undergraduate because of the grammar problems I had. I literally had a professor say in this 50-page document, she goes, "You have so many mistakes. I need you to fix this paper, and if you have more than 10 grammar errors, we're going to have to flunk you." And luckily, I didn't flunk out. And so that was kind of like the point in my college career that I was like, I really have to step my writing game up. And so with time and practice, I have been able to be more successful in my writing. And here I am today helping you dissecting rubrics. So what this is picture is a perfect example about what it feels like the first few weeks of class readings and discussions and just, the writing journey and when you first initially start. So that first picture is a Rubik's Cube. And so this is what our books and our classes cover. And then you move on to the more complex version of that Rubik's Cube. And that's when we think about that rubric, when we see it for the first time. And then when we start writing, that's to the extent that we kind of cover our first time. And so it takes making those connections and really diving deep into that rubric to be able to get what the rubric's asking for. So just like the rubrics we give our students, they have different components of it, like the descriptors, the weights, the performances, and really those words of progression within each of those criteria. So the way I unpack rubrics are the same way I unpack standards with my students. And to begin that process, the first thing I do is really to get familiar with that rubric. So number one, read that rubric. Number two, read it so you're familiar enough with it before your first discussion of that assignment. So typically that's your day one of your class when they give you the rubric for the first time. They have it on Blackboard before you start your classes. So go ahead and take a deep dive beforehand. Because going into number three, when you break it down, you're able to ask the clarifying questions to be able to be successful in making that achievement in that rubric. And then number four, write with a purpose. So when I first get started, when I open up those rubrics, although the rubrics show you this progression in there, what I like to, so this progression here from not presented to the accomplished, what I typically do is I make a copy of the rubric and delete anything less than not accomplished so that it ends up looking like this. Because the reason why I do that is because GW is really great about their rubrics. They're very well developed, that the accomplished criteria, the descriptions are so explicit, you should be able to fulfill each of those sections. So really these progression pieces of it are already embedded into what they expect to see in the accomplished level. So after I look at just what the rubric is asking for the accomplished, I go ahead and draft my paper with titles. And the rubric already does that for you. So here are all my level ones in the rubric. So part one, introduction, part two, curriculum leadership design. So I have my red part one on my paper. Now, level number two, it's already in there in the rubric right here. And so it's in my paper here, the curriculum design project. And then the bulk of the material is those level threes right here. And so how I came up with these titles of my paper, and it's probably not going to stay this way. There might be details where I need to move those sections. Maybe I want to talk about the student assessment data and then have a rationale at the end. So these are working, moving pieces, but this is how I start. And so the way I came up with these title names is, again, right there in that rubric. It's all here highlighted: the curriculum design project, the rationale, student assessment data, curriculum design team, and so forth. So you have your whole outline there. You just got to see where it's at. And so diving deeper into it, now that you have an outline, let's dive deep into what that outline's asking for in each part. And so like I compared it to unpacking the standards, we do that so we ensure that our students are meeting the end result. So I have a standard here. It says predict the locations of volcanoes, earthquakes, and faults based on information contained in a variety of maps. And so that's a very action-packed standard. And so there's multiple components that are going on just within that one strand. So for the learning objective, I have my students underline the content and circle the application words, that verbiage. What do I want them to do? And so what I want them to do is I want them to be able to predict at the end, not explain, not detail, not compare, not contrast, but to predict. So what are they predicting? They're predicting something about locations of all these Earth processes using information of a variety of maps. So predicting the locations of earthquakes using information from a variety of maps. So I'm hitting each of those pieces about volcanoes, earthquakes, and faults. Same thing with our rubrics. Circle the verbiage to what extent we want to be accomplished. What actions are we doing within the rubric, and underlining the content we need to do with each of those actions. So we're presenting in this section. I'm analyzing in this section. I'm promoting. And what things am I presenting? I'm presenting student assessment data from multiple sources. I'm analyzing the unit of study, the need for it, and addressing the needs for all learners. And I'm promoting research and changes to instructional practices to improve student learning. So I have 3 action things that are going, and I need to be able to do it by each of those pieces. So again, I'm using that same one here. We're focusing on just this one section. And so from that one section, I made a checklist of everything that's included in here that I need to make sure is presented in my outline or my final product. I need to be able to present multiple sources of student assessment data, present it, and see that's chunked by the different action steps I have. Present it, analyze, promote. Present it, analyze, promote. So number 2, analyze multiple sources of data to A, support the creation of this need of study. So thoroughly analyze, support the creation of the unit study that addresses the needs of all learners. And I kind of broke it down there because there's 2 things going on. The needs of all learners and the need to support this unit of study. And then the analysis that promotes research in and changes to A, the instructional practices, and B, improving student learning. And that's right here, promote research in, and I highlight those ands too, so I know those are sections. Changes in instructional practices to improve student learning. So what that ends up looking like is this: student assessment data, that's my level 3, and then it goes into my level 4s because I'm talking about different multiple sources of data. But all this checklist is in this writing here. So is this the only way you can do this? No, you can actually talk about 1, 2, and 3 in order, and talk about one piece of data, and then talk about another one, 1, 2, and 3. Or you can just, the way I have it set up here. So talking in that level 4 about EOGs and 1 and 2 in this section, and talking about the report card and iReady stuff with 2 and 3. But you could also, what you could do is you could talk about 1, 2, and 3 consecutively. Like I can talk about what are those multiple pieces of data. I can talk about why we need to do that. And then I can talk about how, like a reflection, how that promotes each of these changes. I went ahead and went with this level 4 section of it and talked about each of those with 2 and 3 here. So here's my number 1 on my checklist: student assessment data. In this section, I would talk about the different types of data my team collected and how it's presented. So check, boom, right here, check. So then I talk about the multiple pieces of data. I talk about EOGs, I talk about the NC report card, and I might talk about the iReady testing. So in this section for EOGs, I'm going to describe how the team analyzed specific data and how it supports the creation of this unit of study and how it addresses the needs of students right here. So number 2, check. But that's only for one source of data. Then number 3, I'm going to include an analysis of how it promoted research of instructional practices and how it improves student learning. So check for number 3, but only for one source of data. So what I would have to do to fulfill this whole thing is repeat this last analysis I did when I talk about the NC report card. Do the same last kind of analysis when I talk about iReady testing. And so all of this information is how I was able to fulfill this one section of the rubric. And so I got all my checks in a row. And so when I write, I think of writing like I do when we teach our students to write like a strong paragraph. We tell them 3 to 5 sentences, and then we dissect that and tell them what kind of sentences. So introduction with evidence, and then a concluding sentence. Same thing when it comes to research. So this is where it's going to, you're writing with a purpose. This is how I guide myself in writing. This is just the guidance. I don't write like this in every paragraph I have, but this is a bulk of the structure of my paragraphs. Is the first thing I do in a paragraph when I start is I put in a topic sentence. What is the purpose? What's my focus? Why is this important? So curriculum design is important because using student data is important to design curriculum because. Then number 2, explain your topic. Does your last sentence need more supporting detail? If I've elaborated enough in that first sentence, I usually skip this step, but I can talk about how data drives the reason why we need to make changes in our curriculum. And so that could be number 2 in my paper. Number 3, introduce evidence. So even though I've said that student assessment makes changes, well, what evidence do I have to support that claim? So I can talk about different quotes. Maybe I might pull in a Marzano quote talking about how, from all his studies that he says assessment data can drive what the next change is in your lesson. Or maybe I have statistics, examples, or figures. And then I dive deeper into that. Number 4, insert your evidence. So insert that supporting evidence, and that can be a quote as well. So you can have a fact and then a quote, or you can just introduce it and then provide a quote, or even something from your personal experiences to further support that. And then number 5, unpack that standard or that evidence. Explain how that evidence, what it means and why it's important. So it's important to use the student assessment data to drive instruction because you're going to increase student achievement. Number 6, explain that evidence. So how does that evidence actually prove your point? You're diving deeper before you conclude. And number 7, insert that concluding sentence to support how that evidence proves your point that you're trying to make in the whole paragraph. So it's going to sound a little repetitive with your purpose sometimes, but this is kind of like the structure that I've created, especially if I've hit a writer's block. This structure just kind of keeps me in check of just go ahead and write that out, draft it, and then go back and refine it. So I hope all of this has helped you out, and I wish you luck in your writing processes.